Hello, everyone. This is Debra Richardson, and today I am putting the AP in Happy, where accounts payable teams are empowered to protect the vendor master file from fraud. This podcast will give a voice to accounts payable team members by talking about the growing reality of cyber attacks in their world and which vendor setup and vendor management techniques they can apply to protect the vendor master file from fraud. Need training? Visit the Vendor Process Training Center to enroll in your choice of weekly live and on demand training sessions. Plus, get access to vendor setup form templates and reference tools that will help you and your team avoid fraud, fines, and bad vendor data. So, sign up for a free account to get access to free training sessions, vendor process FAQs, and a resource library with information you need to manage your vendor master file. Visit training.debrarrichardson.com today. The link will be in the show notes. So, did you know that you can find lots of fraud prevention resources from the Better Business Bureau? Well, in this episode, Troy Baker from the Michigan Better Business Bureau talks about fraud using the BBB for validations and what we both think is the best thing to do that will keep your company protected from fraud. Keep listening. Welcome to episode 339, the Better Business Bureau's Troy Baker on how to shield your business from fraud using B2B resources. So in this episode, I am talking to Troy Baker, and I think I tell how I meet him, but I met him. He came to one of my sessions on fraud because I do a lot of in-person speaking. And so he came up to me afterwards, gave me his card and said, I'd love to be on your podcast. And so I definitely took him up on it. So I hope you get something out of this great interview. Welcome, Troy Baker. I am so happy to have you on the podcast. Matter of fact, I was really happy that you came up to me after a session that I did on fraud at the Michigan Small Business Conference. And you offered to, come on the podcast because you like, right, talking about fraud, Better Business Bureau. And I kind of jumped all over that. So welcome, and tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about what you do at the Better Business Bureau.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work with the Better Business Bureau doing a number of things, but my focus is on our educational foundation, the 501c3 side of the Better Business Bureau of Michigan. And our main focus is to educate businesses and consumers on issues affecting trust. And that mainly focuses a lot on fraud prevention. We know that if we can teach people to avoid the bad things and give them the tools to research good, trustworthy businesses, we know they will naturally find those organizations that will treat them the right way and do the right thing for them. So we really spend a lot of time out in the community talking to people and teaching them about what to avoid and what those scams are so that they can be informed consumers and go towards those organizations that will treat them right.
Perfect. So, I mean, that's how we met. I just talked about we met because you were in one of my fraud sessions where I was talking to small businesses. So I always talk about fraud. And so you mentioned that the Better Business Bureau, right, helps individuals or consumers to give them the tools necessary to avoid fraud. So what do you offer for companies, right, to help them keep up to date with fraud and scams? And I know, right, individuals work for companies, but what what do you offer? And then, or what does the Better Business Bureau offer? And then, does that include both internal and external fraud? Because, sometimes we have internal fraudsters too.
Yeah, when we talk about scams, there are scams that affect all of us because all of us are consumers. No matter what your job is, when you go home at the end of the day, you are a consumer as well. We all go to the grocery store. We all, do those things that we all do. So we do talk about those scams that affect all of us, no matter what our job is. But we talk to business groups and business leaders about those scams that specifically target businesses as well. And there are similarities between these. There are common scams. They mix the wording up a little bit with it. They frame it a little differently, but it's really the same scam. It's just targeted a little differently. But then there are completely different scams that only businesses need to worry about. So we talk to them about what are those things? What are those things that business leaders need to know about? What are those things that they need to train their staff to watch for and avoid? And how does that really impact your organization? Because it really is a huge issue within Michigan as a whole and our whole country. Businesses get hit a lot by scams. It can be as simple as sending you a fake invoice and hope you pay it. It is that one of the most common scams we see and the most low tech. I send you a bill and hope you pay it, and it works. So we talk about those types of things, but we also talk about other types of scams as well. We do some training for businesses on trust and ethics as well, and how their businesses can operate within the marketplace with trust and ethics. And some training opportunities for things like how do you handle complaints and reviews. There's that old the customer is always right, and I think if you've been in business long enough, you know that there are customers that are not right,
Yeah.
but you still need to deal with them in an honest and ethical way. Because how you deal with that problematic customer really says a lot about how your organization operates with all of your customers going forward. So we try to do some training opportunities for businesses to teach them not just on the scam side of things, but on just the operating with trust and ethics in the marketplace side of things. Usually these are done in group settings. So as a chamber group or a networking group or a local business group or a trades group might bring us in to talk about those. But we do have the opportunity to come in and talk to other organizations as well, if it fits right.
Yeah, and that's something that I didn't realize that the Better Business Bureau does. And I didn't know that could go to businesses and, talk about business scams like in real life. And we were just talking before, I hit record that you're going to be like all over Michigan right this week. And so again, I didn't know that. And you can do the same thing in schools too, right?
Yeah, we've got a great program that we started on the west side of the state about 7 years ago called Scam Busters. And it's a game that we do in schools, typically high schools, a lot of personal finance and life skills classes. And what we do is we split the class up into teams and put up a slide that may or may not be a scam. And the team has to decide, is this real or is this fake? And then we call on the team and have them justify their answers. Why did you think this was real? Why did you think this was fake? And we give a lesson for each of those. So sometimes it's a fake email. Sometimes it's a bad website. Sometimes it's another type of offer you found somewhere. Maybe it's a text message. But we go through the how do you tell real from fake? How do you make that determination? And give them the tools so that they can be wise consumers as they grow. And we do it as a game, so each team gets a big foam die, and if their team gets it right, they roll their dice for points. So now it's a competition between the kids. It's really engaging. We did in 2024, we did just about 250 classes
Oh,
across
wow.
West Michigan. And what we're really excited about is now that we're the BBB of Michigan and we're covering the entire state, we're going to be able to roll that program out statewide starting in the fall. So those schools on the east side of the state that didn't have that opportunity, it's there now starting in the fall for kids all across the state. And we're really excited about that.
You know what? I think that is so great, so important because I post a lot of new scam alerts. We'll talk about, Better Business Bureau posting a lot of scam alerts, but a lot of them that I post are at colleges. And so it's great to get, them at the high school level because if they're not seeing it already, they're definitely going to see it, if they go off to, right, off to college. And so I think that's great that you're starting, and wow, 250, right, classrooms, and that was just on the west side of Michigan.
Right.
So you did mention, right, that you are with the Michigan branch, if I said that right, of the Better Business Bureau. So I guess for those listeners that are outside of Michigan, they can check with their local Better Business Bureau to see what they offer, right?
Correct. So the Better Business Bureau covers all of the U.S. and almost all of Canada,
Oh,
with
Canada
different
too.
locations.
Okay.
And each location, each region is split up a little differently. So Michigan used to have two branches. We recently merged, and now there is one BBB of Michigan.
Okay.
Other states, Wisconsin has a single branch, Minnesota has a single branch, but then Omaha, Nebraska covers like 5 states. All of us do very basic, regular things dealing with businesses. And then most of us will do some sort of fraud presentation in the community, and some work for businesses, educational outreach and opportunities for businesses. But all of those are a little bit different in how they go. So, like you said, I would just recommend if you're outside of Michigan, reach out to your local Better Business Bureau and ask what they have available. I bet you will find something. It might not be Scam Busters. Some of them are. Some others have started doing Scam
Yeah.
Busters, but they will have something for your organization and your group that will fit what you're doing probably.
All right, that's great advice. So I like that you can tackle it at the local level, which might get you some, in-person engaging presentation or even game, right? To make sure everybody's up to date on fraud. At the national level, though, I know that I've been recommending, right, the BBB or Better Business Bureau tools for companies, right, to educate their employees and keep up to date on frauds and new scams. So, but I know you also have like a new thing you're doing. So, can you talk about like at the national level, what's offered on the Better Business Bureau website to keep up to date with fraud and scams?
Yeah, so there are a number of programs that people can access and use to stay up to date. The easiest one is our scam tracker, bbb.org/scam tracker. This is a national database of scams, and it is based off people reporting them. So we want, unfortunately, most people that are affected by scams don't report them. And that's nationwide. If you lose money, there are a number of reasons why you wouldn't report the scam. Often you're embarrassed. You don't want people
Yeah.
to know. You feel bad about it. And the problem with that is, well, yes, I understand you're protecting yourself by not telling anybody about it. You're not helping protect anybody else, though. And if you fell for it, I guarantee your neighbors are too. So the best thing you can do is report these scams. The beautiful thing about Scam Tracker is it is anonymous when that information goes out. The only information that is shared is the zip code. So the only thing you'll know is somebody in Detroit says they lost $5,000 to this scam. It doesn't say who, it doesn't say what street you live on, it doesn't give that personal information, but it allows you to tell people this was the scam. This was the website that I went to. This was the phone number they used. This was the email address. This was the name of the person they used. This was the language and how they wanted me to give them money. Beware, neighbors, friends, beware of what's going on. And we use this data to help share out our alerts that go out to people. So we have scam news releases that go out. So as we find these trends, we send that information out to consumers and let them know these are the things that we're seeing. There's also an email that goes out weekly on Fridays, a scam alert. So this is kind of the scam of the week almost. These are the things that we see that are happening and the warnings that we want to share out. And you can register for those scam news and those scam alert emails so that you get them right in your email box and you can get them whenever you need. But all of that data comes from people reporting that on Scam Tracker. It's completely free. So we really do want to encourage people to report that. The other great thing is that data is also shared with the Federal Trade Commission and the FBI's IC3. So when we look at national data, when the Federal Trade Commission comes out each year with its big report on the scams and everything, they take in the data from us and the FBI and other organizations that deal with this to create a good list and database as comprehensive as they can about scams within the US. So sharing your information with us doesn't just limit it here at the Better Business Bureau level. That helps inform actions across the country.
Well, I had no idea that that information was shared. I get it with the FTC, and I didn't know that either. But I didn't know you shared it with the FBI because I always pull right every year. They do that IC3 report, so they'll report on all the scams and frauds that have been um, reported the year before. So they just recently came out with the report for 2024 activity. And you're right. I would love, you talked about the fact that, a lot of folks are not reporting these scams, and I really wish that they would because that's how we learn about them. But I see with these FBI IC3 reports that the number of victims for, let's say, business email compromise scams, which, with my listeners is huge because, a lot of times that's how they get the changes for even legitimate vendor remittance detail changes. That's how they get them, is via email. And so these business email compromise scams where you get fraudulent requests, right, to change either the bank account for electronic payments or the remittance address for check payments. Those have been, the reporting of those have each year have been reduced, right? It started off in, like, I don't know, 2019 with 24,000 incidents. And now it's like almost 21,000, I think 500 just below that for 2024. But we know that that it probably has not decreased. It's just that less folks are reporting it, which again is bad because if they report it, maybe, others can see what the fraudsters are doing now that made it successful. And I will
Absolutely.
tell you too, when I recommend the scam tracker, and you mentioned this too, you said, it's a great way to figure out that, the invoices, fraudulent invoices are being sent right regionally, because again, you can check by zip code. But I always use the example of, I don't know, Continental Trucking. So it may say if you get an invoice from this company, right, it is a fake company. And so I love the scam tracker for that. And I actually do love your Friday scam alert email. I think that's fairly new. But last Friday, I mean, it was a wealth of information in that email. So I love that that goes out now.
Yeah, the other thing that we've started doing at the national level and actually the international level is trying to provide resources on scam survivors. So we know that once you fall victim to a scam, there's a lot that goes on with you trying to deal with that and providing resources for those that have lost money or had other impacts from scams. So we actually have a web page with a whole system set up So if you are somebody that has fallen victim to a scam in some way, you can go to our scam survivor page at bbb.org and find those resources there, which will allow you to find, maybe it's mental health resources. Maybe you don't know, okay, I lost money here and I don't know what to do next. It will walk you through, this is what happened, and then give you a list of steps and resources that you can take to try to help recover from that. And in many cases, as sad as it is, mental health is a big part of that. There's trust that was lost, there's anxiety involved, especially if it was a large dollar amount. I spoke to one woman a couple years ago. She lost $240,000 in a romance scam.
Mm.
You can only imagine what would happen to your life if you lost $240,000. Like that's devastating. I can only imagine how bad that is, both from financially and how do you recover it, but just emotionally and mentally. There's additional help needed there. So it's a great way to find those resources for those that have fallen victim to scams.
Yeah, and that is so first of all, I have no idea what I would do if I lost, $240,000 of my money. I would probably definitely need to go to that page. But that survivor page, and I didn't know that existed. So we'll definitely make sure we link that up in the show notes. But and it can be just as bad, right? If you lose that amount of money or more, or maybe even less too, right, of your company's money. Because what I have seen is that with folks that have fallen victim to scams at their company, maybe made that bank change, maybe made that remittance address change, and that fraudulent payment went out, is the level of guilt is just, it's real. And so what I've seen happen in some cases, people retire early, people move out or transfer out of that department into another department. So yeah, it's real, and definitely we'll put that survivor page link in the show notes. I'll take a look at it too, because I didn't know you offered that. So this is great.
Yeah, the business side, it is very interesting to look at how
Yeah.
businesses recover and the different ways they recover following scams and monetary loss. I look at, there was a story in Southwest Michigan a few years ago about a doctor's office that got hit with ransomware. And the doctors just decided, instead of paying the $500,000, we're just going to retire. We're done. But they didn't have access to their files to call the patients and say, I know you have an appointment coming up, but the doesn't exist anymore. So they just had to wait for patients to show up to tell them there's really no appointment for you. And we don't have your access to any of your medical records anymore.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so you whenever you think about scams, we all think about the financial loss, and that's very real, and that can be a huge hit for businesses. But there's
Yeah.
also other side losses that come into that. That maybe, as you said, you retire early. Maybe you have to take additional expenses to close the barn door now that the horses got out, right? You
Yeah.
need to take additional steps to secure your networks, to secure your system, additional training opportunities. Maybe your insurance costs go up because of a loss.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to take additional programs or things, that technology to protect yourself. Things
Right.
that you really, and then, there's all sorts of fines and fees and things that come along with data breaches and loss. The government may come after you and fine you for not doing the right steps to begin with. So there's all sorts of drawbacks to scams. So we talk about scam survivors for individuals, but
Yeah.
businesses have very similar things as well.
Wow. And wow, doctor's office and yeah, they had to like wait there for patients and they lost the history of Medicaid.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. I hadn't even thought about that, but I guess fraudsters know that, that information is valuable, so they're targeting even someone as small as what could be right a small operation for like doctor's offices. So wow.
And as a business, you are a victim, of course,
Yeah.
but your customers are victims. Those patients were a victim of this. Their patient records were compromised or at least
Yeah.
inaccessible. So imagine trying to go find a new doctor and they say, okay, well, we'll transfer your records. And you're like, I don't have any. There are
Right.
no records available of the
Right.
history I had with this doctor. Maybe you're an auto repair shop and your credit card system was compromised. Okay, well now your customers' personal data has been compromised. Your customers
Mhm.
are victims of this scam, just like you are.
Right. Right. And speaking of that, right, the victims of the scam, yes, it's the company, right, that makes that fraudulent payment, but thinking about it from the AP side or from the AR side, put it that way, also your vendors, right, are victims of it because they're like off doing vendor things. They have no idea, right, that a fraudster had, their clients change their remittance information. And so that's on the APAR side, but then it could also be right on the payroll side too, because fraudsters will target any, direct deposits or checks. And so they could go into payroll as well. And so now, other employees are also victims. And I know when I was uh, still a practitioner and there was a fraud, fraudsters will sometimes for companies hit both accounts payable and employee payroll deposits. And so that's what happened. And so it's just right. Fraudsters, I should say, are just evolving and they have no, let's see, what's a great way to call it? No ethics, right? They will attack all sides and every size company that has payments that they can try and divert when we're talking about, right, diverting those ACH payments or those check payments to fraudsters. They're targeting everyone and all payments.
If there's a chance for them to make money on it, they're going to take it.
Yeah.
Um,
All right.
yeah.
Yeah, so getting into the AP and accounts receivable space, right? We go to companies, we're always onboarding vendors, right, for AP so we can make payments for the goods and services that they provide. And then we're always onboarding on the AR side, always onboarding customers, right? And they could be fraudulent as well. And so it's getting harder to find additional validations, right, to ensure a company is real, that their address belongs to them. So, how can the Better Business Bureau help with vendor validations and customer validations?
Yeah, and we're happy to help businesses in any way we can. And I think verifying that your partner is legitimate is a great way to use our resources. And I will always say, just like any kind of research you do for anything, even as a consumer, um, never stop with a single source. You always want to make sure that you're running it through a couple different things and making sure it all lines up. And if it's different, look for another source. Do some additional resources. Do some additional searching. Make sure that you're not just taking somebody's word for it. So with the Better Business Bureau, we've got company profiles on our website bbb.org, that all of the companies that we've been able to verify information on, have information on there. I will say that the information for a BBB accredited business is probably much more up to date than a non accredited business. And that's just because of the interaction we have with our BBB accredited businesses. So what an accredited business is, it's a business that we have vetted, that's gone through our process, that meets our standards of trust and accreditation, and have applied for and have become accredited through us. As part of that, and Debra, having walked through that yourself, there's conversations that go on with the business owner or the business leader, getting the company's information and how that goes. And then we go through and we verify that. We check with the state licensing boards. We check with, check their LLC or their corporation documents, check on their websites, and make sure everything lines up and that what they're presenting out to the public is as truthful as we can verify. So when you go to bbb.org and you find a BBB accredited business, we've had some interaction with them. We've done some work to make sure that's accurate. The other profiles of other businesses that aren't accredited, we gather that information from a number of sources, sometimes directly from the business. We send out business questionnaires. So businesses actually get outreach from us saying, hey, this is the information we have on hand. This is still accurate. Looking at websites, looking at state documents for LLCs, and okay, what are they saying the state has? So we try to verify as much as we can with them, but we don't necessarily have regular contact with them to verify that it's still accurate. It was certainly accurate at the time we put it on, but maybe a year from now, maybe they've moved, right? So and we just haven't been notified yet. So it is a real opportunity, though. We've got a couple 100,000 businesses across Michigan within our database. And if you're looking to verify that the company that you're thinking of doing business with is legitimate, it's a great way to start. But again, it should not be the only stop. You should always be looking at other resources as well to verify.
Well, and I have to tell you, I have because I always recommend for the accounts payable team, vendor team, and now also for, the team that's responsible for onboarding customers, that you have to make sure that these vendors are real, because fraudsters, right, are using synthetic identities. They are, giving or using a combination of real information and fraudulent information. So, you have to make sure that you're doing validations to make sure the vendor is real, to make sure that the, company is tied to the address that they give you at least somewhere. And so I had recommended in the past, right, the information on the Better Business Bureau. But again, I'm so glad you attended my session, because I definitely will now. It doesn't hurt to have an additional resource for validation. And if you find a business that is accredited, right, that is more likely than not that information is valid, and that vendor is definitely real. That vendor or customer is definitely real. So definitely going to add, right, the Better Business Bureau to my list of options or resources to validate both vendors and customers. But I just have a question on. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought this topic up. Just this morning, I had a business that's been accredited since 2017 reach out to me. They're adding information onto the web. They've run everything through Facebook, but they want to get a Google business profile. But Google needs to verify that they really are this business. So I wrote up a document on our letterhead that tells Google, yes, we've spoken to this business owner. They've been accredited with us since 2017. They do business out of this location. This is, the accurate information that we have for them. So it's not just your vendors. I mean, even companies like Google are looking for that verification and that validation from places. And if a big company like Google says they need to do it, I don't care what size business you have, you need to do it as well.
So first of all, I didn't know Google was doing that. I love that they do that, right? Rather than, onboard some impersonated, or allow a fraudster to create unvalidated or impersonated brand as a, Google business. So that's great that they do that. Um, and let me ask you something. So, we talk about, businesses and company profiles and getting accredited. A lot of my listeners, and also when I was a practitioner, we had a lot of individuals that were our vendors. And I'm sure on the AR side, they have a lot of customers that are individuals as well. So is that something that the Better Business Bureau can help with as well? Will you have individuals that on the site that can be searched?
If it is a company, we're not going to do this if it's a hobby. But
Yeah.
if you're operating it as an actual company, we can build a profile for you. It is free to have a business profile and just be listed on our website with your information. That doesn't cost any money, but we will want to walk through a process to kind of validate as much as we can the information that's there. We do have, the Better Business Bureau. A lot of the businesses, I mean, just in general, businesses in general are small businesses. You're talking about, maybe a sole proprietorship, maybe one or two employees. That's the majority of businesses in our country are just small
Yeah.
businesses, and um, we're happy to take that information and share that out with consumers because our goal is to provide consumers information about a business. And the more we can learn about that business, the more we can provide that consumers and to help that business show legitimacy and that they do operate with trust and ethics.
All right. So even right, a company that and my listeners on the vendor management side or AP side that on would know this, right? That on the W-9, those vendors that select that first tax class of individual sole proprietorship used to be a single member LLC. That might be like a John Doe DBA, John Doe Lawn Service. John Doe's lawn service or John Doe could have a profile right on the page that they can then search to make sure that John Doe is a real company, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. All right. So that's great. So what other resources do you recommend for companies to avoid fraud or validate that the companies and maybe even the individuals that that they are onboarding for vendors or customers, just to make sure they're real? What other recommendations do you have?
Yeah, as you and I talked before, the biggest thing is your goal is to make it hard on the scammers to take advantage of you. Nobody is ever going to be perfect. There is no silver bullet to this. It takes work, and to find anything you can do to make it hard, and that means a lot of times having a process and a system and having it written in stone. No matter what, the system will be followed. Now, every system is different for each business because each business process is different. But from a standpoint of, especially if it has to do with finances or data, everything needs to be validated in the right way. You're not changing people's accounts because of an email or a phone call. You have to make sure that you are really dealing with the right person. So a lot of times that means you got to do something face to face to get it there, or have some additional systems in place that you can verify that is. And it's hard for me to say the exact right process because every business operates differently. So not one system fits all. Um,
Yeah.
but when it comes to validating, businesses that you're working with, the Better Business Bureau is a great resource to do. BBB.org. When we talk to people that come to our website, they usually come to our website for two different reasons. One, they know the business they want to work with and they want to figure out more about that. They want to learn if this really is the business they want to work with. So they're going there to look, are they legitimate? Do they have a good rating with the Better Business Bureau? Are they BBB accredited? What kind of complaints or reviews do they have? How do they deal with those? So they're there to be an informed consumer. The other reason people come to BBB.org is because they know the type of business they want to find, but they don't know which one to use. So maybe you need a roofer, but there's a million roofers out there. How do I pick? So they type in roofing and they get a list of roofers, and then they can evaluate off of that list what works best for them. The biggest thing for the Better Business Bureau is we don't play favorites. I love all of our accredited businesses. There are great businesses in the world that are not BBB accredited. That is a business decision for you to make. What I always tell people are, you need to make the best decision for you. So if this business is better for you in this instance than this other business, that's perfect. We just want to make sure that you are an informed consumer and that you're making the decision in an informed way. You're not just winging it and doing something that is risky because you didn't know. And we know that in the end of the day, if we share that information with people, they will, by and large, find those businesses that are trustworthy and work with those that have that track record.
And when that brings up, and I do again recommend the Better Business Bureau actually for right and fraud. We talked about that before for staying up to date. But you guys also have a something for charity, so you can look up. Folks can come and look up that charity and see if they are real, right? And then also get some more information about them. I talk about you guys and that resource a lot near the time of Giving Tuesday, right? Because a lot of fraudulent charities will pop up around I think it's the first Monday or first Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And so forgot to mention that, but that's a great resource as well.
Yes, that's give.org, the Wise
Yes.
Giving Alliance that's affiliated with the Better Business Bureau.
Yeah.
And they do our charity accreditation. So we do accredit charities. And having worked through that system myself, I will tell you, a charity that goes through and gets BBB accredited, that's some work. This is a full-on exam. There's 20 standards that they have to meet, and it's everything from board makeup to board policies to financials to, I mean, it's a lot that a charity has to go through, a full-on exam to
Yeah.
make sure that they're meeting those 20 standards. And those that clear that threshold, man, that's an organization you want to be able to really put out there and support because they've shown they're doing it the right way.
That's great. So listeners, if you are onboarding a charity tax exempt organization, make sure you go to give.org. I will definitely put that in the show notes. And Troy, I do really like what you said about, right, there is no silver bullet, because I say that all the time. And I get asked that all the time. What is the one thing, that you can do to spot a fraud or avoid a fraud? And there isn't, right? All companies are different. Their processes are different. And so I like the fact that you said you have to have a process in place that works for your company and then make sure everybody follows it. And I'll go a step further and say, put a vendor process audit in place, right? To make sure that everybody is following it. Because unfortunately, right, we're all human beings. Things get, busy at work. And, if you've had a fraud, the farther away, that time passes, people start to forget. And so it is great to make sure that you have a process in place, but it's also great to make sure that you're auditing that process so that it will always continue to be done, because if there is, that audit in place, that means that request that was processed can be pulled, and so that is, the incentive, right, for employees to always follow what you've put into place to avoid fraud. So I do like that.
It's the old trust but verify saying.
Trust
Um,
but verify.
always got to make sure they're following through with it.
All right, so this has been great. I know we're going to put a lot of links in the show notes, but is there anywhere that you think they should go? Can they connect with you, or what's the best place to either connect with you or to get more information? Page one.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on what they're looking for. Um, BBB.org is always the safest spot to go to learn about a business and find resources. Um, for those that are looking for Scam Tracker, it's bbb.org/scam tracker. And then contact your local bureau to find out about other options available. In Michigan, it's bbb.org/mi programs, and that will get you to our educational foundation that'll talk about different events and different programs and educational opportunities that we have available through our 501c3 educational foundation. But again, every bureau has their own systems to do that. It's just a matter of connecting and finding out what's there for you.
Yeah, and so when I talk about, where should they start? Page one, I love bbb.org, but then I also love the fact that, right, you reminded everyone to make sure you go and check your local BBB, Better Business Bureau office to see what they offer locally. And again, that could be an in real life presentation. And so again, I didn't know you offered that. So that's great. And the local offices may do that as well, in other states, not just Michigan. So thanks for joining. Love all the great information you gave, Troy.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, so I sure hope you got something out of that interview. I definitely did. I did not realize that the Better Business Bureau does as much as they do. All right, so thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed the 339th episode of the Putting the AP in Happy podcast, where accounts payable teams are empowered to protect the vendor master file from fraud. Don't forget to check the show notes for the links mentioned in the podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing and writing a review of my podcast on the platform that you use to listen. Stay happy.